What music do you use to calm yourself down when you feel full of conflict? What do you use to ramp yourself up? I am Tavish Cardiff. It is our Raw Materials Conflict Week, and I'm here to talk about the conflict pillar. In order to do that, it's important to talk about the concept of ego and soul. And for our Raw Materials purposes, our ego and our soul both have an equal and powerful voice within us if we let them. Our ego takes care of us, our physical body. It perceives us in relation to the rest of the world. And depending on all of our circumstances, the rawest of our raw material, we start to put together the picture of what we trigger by, what we respond to, what we resonate with, etc., etc. And what that does is show us the areas that we are going to feel conflicted. And you'll notice we look around and we expect everyone else to feel conflicted about the exact same things we do, because at some level we really do know that we're all connected. This is the rub. We don't know it consciously to the point where we expect other people to know things. So our soul voice is a more subtle, quiet thing that tells us a lot of our truths. It tells us the soul voice is never going to tell you something negative or bad about yourself. It's always going to remind you who you are and where your power lies. It's going to reach out to you in just your random thoughts or your dreams, or looking at a landscape or a cloud. The thoughts that come up when your mind isn't really occupied, when you are just thinking from within yourself. Those are the types of thoughts that equal what comes from the soul's voice. And it may seem silly to start paying attention to random thoughts as if they matter, but once you do, you can start seeing patterns to them. And when you see the patterns, then it becomes really fun to see what they connect to. And as you start to understand your own reactions that make things feel conflicted for you, it opens up a whole world of communication and looking for the reasons why someone else is conflicted, rather than expecting them to share yours or understand wholly when you say that you misunderstand or need more clarification or run up against someone's trigger. Being able to give the grace of space so that they can explain how they feel, even if they're not able to do that for the people around them. And sometimes just modeling that behavior is helpful to transform the environments around us and the conflict around us. We'll take the tool from last week, the ideal playground, and conflict is where our values list becomes so important. I mean, if you don't know where your values lie, you will get yourself in trouble. Case in point, me right here today. I had a little surgery on my ankle last week, I had a tumor removed, and my dad's in the hospital, so I'm a little more focused on that than anything else. And in terms of values, I haven't set my values. It is Values and Ideals Week. I will also add that part. And I keep joking to my family today that I am a cautionary tale for my father to pay attention to what the doctors say and follow their advice. And in my defense, I'm going to say I was conflicted about the definition of light walking. I feel like what I have done over the past few days is very light walking. It's not a lot of walking for me. However, I do understand that what sounds like what they were asking while I was under anesthesia was something lighter than what I was considering light. So I'm sitting here kind of grounded with some swelling and, having to face my own actions today and having to look at my value system and realize, oh yeah, my own health needs to be the priority here over my dad, even though on first glance, my brain says, no, my dad's thing's more important and being there for my dad is more important. If I don't heal myself and if I don't take care of my own minor illness, I'm not going to be there to support his major one or anyone else's or anything else for that matter. So slowing my role in my conflicted inability to pay attention to my values list, or in this case, even make one. I've been flying by the seat of my pants for a couple days or a couple weeks, honestly, in reaction. So that would put us back to, listening week, emotion, listening, values, and ideals. These are the things that I'm circling as we head into conflict week. So it would make sense that I would be sitting here grounded today, forced to really consider what I'm saying as I approach the situations in my own life and the conflict in my own life. In conflict, a lot of times we are bothered by things that are out of our control. And those tend to be the things that really get to us and stick. They just get inside of you. And there's obviously, to an extent, nothing that we can do. However, there is the ideal playground, and there is the opportunity to put thoughts out in the universe that are outlandish and crazy and wild, but different than fear and worry, and that put energy towards better solutions, healthier solutions, and to bring that cohesive union. And I don't know how to tell anyone to navigate their own conflict, honestly, because in conflict we're each so triggered. It really is very personal, but it relates to your own values list. And I think when you evaluate your conflict with your own values list, and you have to actually take the time to do it, I let myself be, as they say, too busy to focus on something like that, and it fully derailed me, because I am in a habitual practice right now, intentional practice of paying attention to these things. And so when I don't, I'm shown really quickly how tangled my emotions get when I'm not dealing head on with each one as they come. And I've been pushing certain emotions aside in favor of others just to stay present with what's going on with my dad. Admirable? Sure. Ego-filled? 100%. There's me feeling like my place there makes such a difference when I know energetically I could be anywhere. I could be across the world and still be present with my dad's energy. That's something that I know. So I'm letting certain fears be out in front, creating conflict in areas where I really could be supporting myself if I just stopped to think. So in conflict, it's really important to identify how we feel. And when we're just stirred up, is it something we're really passionate about, or is it something that doesn't really matter? We're just triggered, and so we're jumping into the fight. If we could back off of those instances and instead offer the space for somebody else to work through whatever they feel, ask some questions, but if you can stay emotionally safe and sound within yourself without just escalating something for the fun of it or for no reason at all, we help everybody else stay a lot more centered around that conflict. So back to ego, soul voice. When we listen from those two spaces, we will hear our own inner being in conflict sometimes. And we check that against what's important, and we make a decision on which one has the right of way at any given time. There's this notion that we have to stamp out our ego in favor of our soul, and I don't think that's what this is about at all. This human body, this human expression is here for fun and creation, and to have a good time and to experience all sorts of different emotions. So that's the lane we're in, and that's what we get to do. Our conflict is deciding how it should come at us and by whom and when, and all of the things that we really have no control over. Conflict is a little bit of chaos and allowing that chaos to exist. And when we can let chaos exist and be willing to stand there and move through it, let the emotions that conflict creates be present with us, recognize what they are. I'm going through some things because, I'm afraid for my dad. And then I can let that fear go and I can say, there's no reason to be afraid. What's going to happen is going to happen. I'm going to imagine the best for the situation. I'm going to know that at some point, each one of us aren't going to be here anymore. And I'm going to look from that bigger perspective that says, I'm going to have the tools in place to appreciate exactly what's in front of me, knowing that fear is right there, ready to creep in and start rolling, because fear is really good at getting the ball rolling, at getting wound up or down a rabbit hole, or getting so far away from the issue that you can't even recognize, what things attach to. I think when you go tear apart your arguments with your significant others, you will see that what starts and what ends are often so far away from each other, and what happens in between, the conversation that happens in between, tell a lot more about what's really going on than the initial triggered incident or the way that we resolve those incidents. So conflict itself needs to just be given some space to breathe, and our own bodies some space to breathe, so that each of our organ systems can let go of some of the tightness that we hold when we are stressed and triggered. This week, as you go through every day, listen to your inner guidance for conflict resolution. Listen to what your ego says, listen to what your soul says, and if you can't hear the soul voice, imagine what it might say. Imagine what the nicest thing about you to be said could be said. And just play around a little bit with a voice of connection that is a little more aware than we are, that we have the ability to affect our environment a lot more than we think that we do. And our thoughts and our beliefs and how we feel plays a big part in how conflicted we feel overall, or how personally we take the conflict around us. I'll be back next week to talk about intention as we start the last 4 weeks of the practice. Until then, have a great week.